Let's go! Arik Gilbert, what's going to happen to this 5-star recruit? And normally, we post recruiting videos. And if you want to know a lot about TRISTAN Leigh and KOREY FOREMAN, you want to stick till the end because we're going to look at some trends. What does getting a 5-star recruit actually mean at LSU? So we're going to get into this upcoming class along with, obviously, Arik Gilbert, who is a big piece to LSU's future. Also today, I'm kind of shocked at a disturbing, I say disturbing, but an interesting trend that has happened in recruiting over the past couple of years. So we're going to get to all of that today. Obviously, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let's get to it. So as you can tell here, Arik Gilbert's stats are freaking incredible. All right, 35 catches for 368 and 2 touchdowns, averaging over 10 yards a reception, and his blocking, as you've seen in our film studies, has gotten better and better and better. One thing about 35 catches, why is that number significant? Well, since 2009, think of all the great freshman tight ends. Think about all the great tight ends that have played in the SEC. There has been only one true freshman tight end that has ever had 30 or more catches. That is Jalen Werdermeyer of Texas A&M, who is now a sophomore under Jimbo Fisher. Mental health is a very weird thing. And this is Caroline Gonzalez, the great Saints and Pelicans reporter. I'm not going to pretend to know everything about this situation, but 2020 has taken a toll on all of us. Have you felt like quitting your job? We've said we care about athletes' mental health, so is mental health is being addressed? And obviously, she's been pointing out the toxic comments. So, yes, there is an important balancing act here. Arik Gilbert, I don't like to comment on anyone's mental health, especially if you are a teenager and you have all the pressure that Arik Gilbert has as the highest graded tight end in the country. But I want to change the word mental health. Obviously, it's a very serious thing. But let's strip it down just a little bit. Obviously, if he is going through some depression or, as a lot of people have pointed out, some homesickness, I get it. I mean, 2020 has been hard on a lot of us. So this is a very serious thing, and I hope Arik Gilbert, if he needs help, gets the help. With that said, that has not prevented former players from going after him. And Jacques Doucet, Ed Orgeron, this was a pretty telling quote when he told this to T-Bob and Jordy on 104.5 ESPN. 5-star tight end came to Coach Orgeron and said he's considering opting out. Okay, and there is an update on that. Arik Gilbert has officially opted out on the season. Now, stick with me because we're going to get to what all this means in just a moment. But I want you to notice this. Gilbert says his body is hurting. Okay? Now, I pointed this out on a few live streams. It takes a lot to get former LSU 5-stars and former LSU players to call you out. Well, here's Anthony Freak Johnson. Bro, this new generation gets participation trophies. I hate it here. Entitled kids, boy. You know the vines, G. And this is a response to Greg Gilmore, a former LSU defensive lineman. Body hurting, please. If I would have told that to Anthony Johnson as a freshman. So, I've heard a lot of this. This newer generation is not like our older generation. And I feel like that could be a little cliche and get off our lawn. But if you do say that, I actually have some evidence to back your statement up, because I do think a lot has changed with recruiting over the last couple of years. I'm going to give you time to look at this graphic right here. These are all the 5-star 247 composite recruits to come to LSU. Now, obviously, different people have different recruiting rankings. Obviously, these are just the 5 stars. High-level 4 stars you could basically consider to be 5 stars. But let's just narrowed down our sample size to just 5-star recruits. Because one thing that is true about 5-star recruits is they are universally wanted by all the big programs. So let's stay with the in-state guys. As we mentioned, Lyle Collins, Anthony Johnson, Jarvis Landry, big hit. Leonard Fournette, Malachi Dupree, as I changed here, a hit. Tyron Johnson transferred, but that was during the Anthony Jennings, Brandon Harris, the middle of when Les Miles really got rancid. Any wide receiver would have justifiably transferred. And if you go back and read the quotes from Ross Dellinger, who was at The Advocate at the time, he interviewed Tyron Johnson's dad, and Tyrone Johnson, creative name change there, Tyrone Johnson specifically said the only reason his son was transferring was to play in a more wide-open offense. So, Tyron Johnson, his last year at Oklahoma State, caught 50-plus passes. So, we're not looking at necessarily a real bust here. He was a bust at LSU, but he justifiably left. And guess what? Tyron Johnson left early from Oklahoma State, went undrafted, but he's still in the NFL. He caught a touchdown pass earlier this year from Justin Herbert. So he's been in the NFL for quite some time. So I don't know if you can necessarily say he's a bust when a lot of people would have transferred out of that offense. So we go to 2016. Obviously, Christian Fulton, Rashard Lawrence, huge hits. Terrace Marshall, a gigantic hit. Derek Stingley Jr., huge hit. And then my face might be blocking this out. John Emery, we'll wait and see. So far, so good, but not necessarily great. And Kayshon Boutte, I think it's pretty clear he's going to turn out to be a really good receiver. So notice here, all the Louisiana 5-stars that have committed and played at LSU for the home state school have been mostly gigantic hits. Multiple year starters, most of which are good locker room guys. And in recent years, LSU 5-star recruits looks to be 6 for 6 since 2016. So here we go, out-of-state guys. Clifton Garrett, massive bust, couldn't get his grades together. And honestly, I don't know how great he was. And what's interesting, in this 2014 class, my favorite linebacker I've ever seen out of the state of Louisiana was a guy by the name of Kenny Young from New Orleans. Well, LSU didn't recruit, from what I understand, Kenny Young as much as Clifton Garrett. Kenny Young went out to UCLA, ended up being a star, and I don't know if he's still in the NFL or not. And then Jamal Adams, an out-of-state massive hit. Then in 2015, Kevin Tolliver, pretty big hit. Never an all-SEC player, but he did start all 3 years. He did fight through a shoulder injury as a sophomore. And, you know, he left probably a year too early, but he's still in the freaking NFL. Maya Tuema, grades. He did start. He probably would have turned out to be a really good player, but he's a mess. Jacoby Stevens, obviously a massive hit. But then as we see here in 2019, Marcel Brooks, who would have started on this defense somewhere, decided to leave. Now, his situation is interesting because apparently his family got hit hard by COVID, and there was a defensive coordinator change that came in. How good was Marcel Brooks last year as a true freshman? He was okay. I think he had a sack and a few pressures. He played a lot. I think he was okay. Not anything too spectacular, but he wanted to move closer to home. Same thing here in 2020. Arik Gilbert, homesick, wants to move closer to home. But Elias Ricks is good. But why is Elias Ricks good? Why isn't he homesick? Isn't he from California? Okay. We'll dive into this. These are all the out-of-state 5-stars that LSU's gotten since 2011. Notice one thing Stevens, Tolliver, Adams, and Ricks have in common. Oh, yeah. all 4 of them are defensive backs. Now, why does that matter? Well, number one, LSU's had continuity when it comes to their secondary coach, okay? A lot of these guys were recruited, obviously, by Dave Aranda, but Korey Foreman has been on the staff for, obviously, quite some time. So LSU's had some continuity. But I think the major reason why 5-star defensive backs from out-of-state work at Louisiana is because, well, if you want to go to the NFL and play defensive back, you go to LSU. LSU is the big defensive back brand. DBU is transcendent. It is interesting when I've talked to other recruits from pretty much wherever, and you read about them talking about LSU, they talk about how they watch Tyrann Mathieu and Patrick Peterson on YouTube. The DBU brand is so big that all 5-star defensive backs, at the very least, are going to consider it. Whether it be JaQuincy Kool-Aid McKendry or whoever. 5-star defensive backs want to come to LSU. They just do. So I don't think that is a coincidence, because if things get tough, well, LSU is the place to go to play defensive back. And I think even when you go back to the in-state guys, we need to remember this. Arik Gilbert, when he was deciding whether he was going to go to LSU or wherever, well, like I mentioned in my initial Arik Gilbert video, he came to LSU because of what LSU was in 2019. He didn't come to LSU because he necessarily loved LSU, the program, and the history. He came because he saw what the LSU offense was last year. Joe Brady, who was his primary recruiter, sold him on this very thing, and his secondary recruiter, John DeCoster, is obviously no longer at LSU. He was an assistant tight ends coach. He's moved on, and Brody Miller did some good reporting on that. Now, is this a trend? Is this a trend right now in college football? Let's take a look. So what you see here is Alabama's 5-star recruits, okay? And what's very interesting about Alabama? Well, their tight ends have been the best in the SEC. You can argue Arkansas. Let's take a look at the 5-star recruits that Alabama has gotten. And as you can tell, this list is way longer than LSU's. But as you can see here, and I'm just going to go through these names really quickly. Landon Collins, Eddie Williams, TJ Yeldon. And from Alabama next to it lets you know that the recruit was from Alabama. Eddie Williams was dismissed, had a run-in with the law. But as you can see here, pretty consistent 5-star production from Nick Saban. Not only does he get the 5 stars, they turn out to be really daggum good football players. We get here to Blake Barnett. Could he have started at Alabama and been successful? I don't know, but he was quickly beaten out by Jalen Hurts, who's now a starter in the NFL. But as you can see here, these 5 stars mostly played at a 5-star level. Ben Davis got beat out by, other linebackers, and he's still on the team. He's a backup. Didn't really pan out the way that Nick Saban probably hoped so, but he's still on the team. And he's from Alabama. It's his dream school. He could have easily transferred, and it made a lot of sense. And then we go down here to 2017. LeBron Ray, who's from Alabama. Obviously, all the names that are in bold are guys that didn't produce at a 5-star level. Well, LeBron Ray's interesting. He's had a lot of injuries he's had to deal with. He won the starting job last year and got hurt. So this isn't really a bust per se. He's a good locker room guy, good leader. And cut off down here is Tua. So this shows you that Nick Saban has been dominant with the actual 5 stars he's gotten. But there is something interesting that has happened in recent years. What I want you to do is take a look at the 5-star recruits that Nick Saban has gotten over the past 3 years. Now, let's start with 2020. It's still too early. I mean, they're all true freshmen here. But Will Anderson's played a lot. He's a defensive end. Bryce Young, obviously, has been their backup. Drew Sanders has played a lot on special teams, and Braswell has barely played. So, obviously, still very early. But I want you to look at this. Now remember, you just saw that Nick Saban has a long history of panning out his 5 stars, okay? Only really one of them was a gigantic bust because of off-the-field issues. The highest-rated 5-star defensive end by the name Iabi Anoma and another defensive end in 2019, Antonio Alfano, well, they're no longer with the program, okay? So Nick Saban, who is near perfect on his 5 stars being 5-star starters, has had trouble in recent years. Now, obviously, it's not slowed down Alabama. Their guys not only play well, they stick it out in the program. But that's interesting. Nick Saban, who is the best at getting program buy-in and working hard and all of that, well, there's been issues with his top guys, and let's take a look at that. So here is Iabi Anoma, who was the highest-rated player. He was the number 4 ranked player in his class on his 3rd team in 3 years. Iabi Anoma, all the way down to the FCS level, Tennessee Martin. He had issues with the classroom. He had issues with discipline, violation of team rules, and that continues here with Alfano, who legit left. He just got up and left the program, okay? Now think about this. If you're the great Nick Saban, okay, and we'll get into Alfano just a moment. Well, basically, he said that he just got up and left because his grandmother was sick and she passed, and I totally get that. People handle grief differently. But at the very least, if something was going on with me personally, I would have let the program know. So Mel Tucker picked him up. Then Mel Tucker bolted to Michigan State. And this is from Saturday Down South. Alfano, I want you to actually read his quotes, okay? So he did say the thing about his grandmother, and obviously, you know, that's bad. I was kind of frustrated, honestly, with not seeing as much playing time as I would like. Oh, okay. I was a little frustrated with that and stuff going on back home. That just made my decision easier. So Alfano, who's from New Jersey, transferred to Colorado. These elite 5-star recruits imagine things are just going to be easy. And you're just going to get playing time, and you're going to be a star right out the gate. Even in the last 2 years, these kids didn't want to buy into what Nick Saban was preaching. And obviously, it's a small sample size. But a lot has changed. Let's dive a little deeper. So here we go. Class of 2018, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Xavier Thomas, all 3 of them studs. But Iabi Anoma, the guy we just mentioned, from Maryland. Now, Nick Saban's had a lot of good players from Maryland, most notably Terrence Lewis, who was just an incredible defensive end. But still, we move on. Micah Parsons, who was really good. Surtain, really good. We continue here. All these guys are really, really good players until we get to here, okay? We have Pillai. I can't really say his name correctly, but still, Bishop Gorman High School, prestigious high school, and he goes to USC, okay, which is probably the biggest Division I program close to Las Vegas, a 4-hour drive from Vegas to LA, so not horrible distance. So let's take a look at what happened to our boy Pillai. Well, as a true freshman, started off good. Rotated in 38 tackles, 71 overall grade according to Pro Football Focus. Then he got into the starting lineup, had a great year, but then he got hurt. Okay? And he decided to wait, transfer? Why are you transferring? You're starting. You're playing a lot. We'll get into that in a moment. But Class of 2018. Let's continue on here. We go down here. This is an interesting case right here, Taron Vincent. I want to point something out about IMG in just a second, so keep that in mind. Cade Mays, all right? Cade Mays, 5-star recruit, okay? And notice here, wait, I thought it said he was committed to Georgia. Wait, let's go back. See, Cade Mays, 5-star, Georgia. But why does it say Tennessee? Okay, well, let's go look at Cade Mays' Tennessee profile. And as you can see here, he started off his career with a bang. SEC all-freshman team. He's playing a lot at Georgia. Then as a sophomore, played a lot at Georgia, including the Sugar Bowl at left tackle. Packed his bags and went to Tennessee because he's from Knoxville. He wanted to move closer to home, okay? And I get that, all right? It's the pandemic. Want to move closer to home. But do you notice this? In recent years, as recruiting changes, as we become more player-driven, players are starting to realize their own mobility. So now let's take a look at the 5 stars from the 2019 class. Okay, I brought up IMG Academy. Nolan Smith, who didn't play much as a true freshman, waited his turn, and now he's played a lot at Georgia, okay? Kevon Thibodeau from California went to Oregon. He is a superstar. Derek Stingley Jr. from Baton Rouge, obviously a superstar. Hazelwood's good, but then we see Antonio Alfano, okay? From Colonia, New Jersey, which is not necessarily a football factory. Right when there was some adversity, Alfano said, well, forget Nick Saban. Could you imagine playing for the greatest college football coach of all time? And you can hate Nick Saban all you want, but could you imagine having the audacity to just pack your bags and leave all your teammates? If he would have just told Alabama, hey, I'm dealing with something, can I go? I think they would have just been fine with it. But he just got up, and like Nick Saban said, he just quit. But notice the 2 guys after him. So Evan Neal played a lot as a true freshman, but Trey Sanders didn't. He's still working his way. He's Najee Harris's backup. But notice where they went, okay? Keep IMG Academy in your mind. So we keep going here. Zach Pickens from South Carolina, playing well for South Carolina. But we get to one of the most fascinating stories in recruiting, which is Bru McCoy. So what about Bru McCoy? Well, Miran Fader, one of my favorite long-form writers in journalism, wrote a very interesting story about Bru McCoy, who committed to USC, then transferred to Texas, and then transferred back to USC. What? Let's go down to his timeline, okay? Bru McCoy enrolls at USC, decommits from USC, commits to Texas, enrolls at Texas. 6 months later, back at USC. Why? But look, Carter, you can't say that Arik Gilbert is homesick and Eli Ricks is from California. Both of them are playing a lot. Both of them are starting. Both of them have been productive. Both of them have been great. How can one of these guys be homesick and the other one be just fine? Well, remember what we pointed out earlier. 5-star defensive backs from outside of the state of Louisiana are 4 for 4. But 5-star every other position out of the state of Louisiana, 0 for 4 if you include Arik Gilbert. So obviously we saw what happened with Marcel Brooks and Clifton Garrett and Maya Tuoima. Now why is that important? Well, it's simple. When you go to LSU to play defensive back, that is the premium place to play defensive back. When you think college defensive backs, the first thing that universally everyone says is LSU, and then obviously after that, it's Alabama and Ohio State. So LSU is DBU. But Eli Ricks, did you notice, as we were going through the recruiting, guys, IMG Academy has a lot of strong kids, right? Kids that hold firm like a Trey Sanders, who don't start at first, but eventually stick it out before they decide to transfer. But why is that? Well, it's simple. When you go to IMG Academy, it is essentially you going to a college program. And for those that don't know, IMG is like a superstar high school. It's like a prep school. There's 5-star athletes not only in football, but there's 5-star tennis players and 5-star all kinds of athletes. So when you go to IMG, guess what? You're around a bunch of other 5-stars and high-level 4-stars. You're no longer the big schmuck on your school's campus or in your city. Okay? And Eli Ricks went from California and played at a high level, then through injury at IMG, played at a high level on 2 completely different coasts. So he's already accustomed to being away from home and not being the dude on your campus. And that says a lot. And I said before the year that I personally liked Eli Ricks a little bit better than Arik Gilbert simply because of that. Because I saw him on these opening camps or whatnot. He was the first guy taking the rep. He wanted to go up against the other 5-star receivers. He has that bite. He has that fight. It's you could see it with the way that he plays. What does this mean for LSU's recruiting this year? So as you can tell, LSU, and we're only focusing obviously on 5-stars in this video, but Rajon Davis was once a 5-star. They knocked him down to a 4-star. But Sage Ryan, Louisiana 5-star, and he plays defensive back. When he gets to LSU, hopefully he still does go to LSU. Guess what? History tells us he's going to be really freaking good. My tape study backs that up. People I constantly speak to, that backs it up. This guy is the real freaking deal. And this is as 100% of a hit rate as you're going to get. Now, let's take a look at LSU's top targets. So, a lot of you want KOREY Foreman, okay? But let's talk about KOREY Foreman and TRISTAN LEIGH. And I want you to take a look at this, okay? California kid with the USC offer, who obviously they won him a whole lot. Arizona State is after him. Arizona State's got a lot of NFL guys on their staff. Herm Edwards, Antonio Pierce. Clemson, the premier program on the East Coast, wants you. You are already committed. Georgia desperately wants you. Look at all the great defensive players Georgia's put in the draft. Alabama would still welcome you with open arms. Is this actually a good thing, though? Maybe. Okay, I don't know KOREY Foreman personally. I hear him in interviews, and that's great. But there's one thing that you have to account for with 5-star guys. Guess what? They're the title of most headlines to recruiting articles. There's hundreds of articles written about how great you are and how badly every team needs you. They desperately need you. When in actuality, it's the exact opposite. No school needs any one recruit. I've said that repeatedly. And when I watch KOREY Foreman, looks like he's going to turn out to be a really great player. I like him better at defensive tackle than defensive end, but that's not here nor there. But as you've noticed in recent years, defensive end has had a high transfer rate when it comes to the high-level 5-stars, even when they go to Alabama. And I think a reason is because, well, players are more mobile. Transfer rules are more lax. The athlete that they all look up to, LeBron James, has made player mobility the fashionable thing. And I like player mobility. But the thing that you have to account for 5-star recruits is that they have a high level of indecisiveness. okay? And it could be crippling. I struggle with indecisiveness. It's one of my biggest weaknesses. And it's one of those things. When you have options to do things, and KOREY Foreman has far more options to live his dreams than any of us, when you have that at your disposal, guess what? You're constantly asking yourself, well, do I want to go there? Do I want to go here? Do I want to be there? Do I want to be here? And that's tough. I think that's a big reason why we have not seen a 5-star out-of-state player that doesn't play defensive back work at LSU. And as you see here with TRISTAN Leigh, obviously a big thing about his recruitment is his mom and his brother plans on moving to wherever he wants to go. But as you can see here, all the big dogs want you. Ohio State, Oklahoma, Alabama, Florida. They'll open you, they'll with open arms take you in. And that's the thing about being a 5-star, because it's always embedded in your head that any school wants you. Hey, if I want to, they say, hey, if I want to transfer, I could go wherever I want. Okay? And homesickness sits in. And you being the 5-star, guess what? You're the biggest story at your school. You're the biggest story in your town. And the first thing that happens when you go to a new school and you actually have to work for playing time and you actually have to be disciplined and go to class, and I'm sure both of these guys are good students. I'm not just saying these two, but when all those things factor in, it gets tough, especially during a pandemic in Arik Gilbert's case. And that's the scary thing, because as a 5-star, you know that everybody wants you, okay? And sometimes that might not help. Here's a good example of this, okay? Let's go to the 2017 recruiting class, all right? Patrick Queen wasn't a high-level 4-star, but he's from Livonia and went to Louisiana. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 3-star, from Baton Rouge, went to LSU. Rayson McMath, a 3-star, great starter for LSU. And then obviously Justin Jefferson, also from Louisiana. This is not said enough in recruiting. The one thing about getting a Louisiana kid to come to LSU is that it provides clarity. Because the dream of not just that kid, but their family members and everyone around them at school, their friends, their parents' neighbors and friends and all of that, their dream is for you to go to LSU. You're surrounded by LSU. Doesn't matter where you are in the state of Louisiana. So when you go to LSU, all of these guys, Queen, Clyde, Racy, especially Justin, they had to wait their turn, okay? And because they were hungry to be successful, and they were hungry to prove LSU right, and they were hungry to make their respective Louisiana cities work, that in and of itself said to them, if it's going to work, I want it to work at LSU. I want to do this for my state. I want to do this for everyone back home. Whereas for Arik Gilbert, nobody in Georgia cares about LSU. Now, of course, there's a lot of LSU people that live in Atlanta, but that is a Georgia Bulldog state. Arik Gilbert wasn't surrounded by LSU things. So that factors in. When you, now as a player, know that transfer rules are going to be more lax, guess what? You could do whatever you want. The world is your oyster. You're used to people telling you how great you are. They don't have other Division I coaches that desperately want them to transfer to their school. It's just the simple truth. When you're an elite 5-star, when you're Arik Gilbert and Matt Ryan visited your school to give you the Gatorade Player of the Year, and over time, the big YouTube sensation did a bunch of videos on you and it racked up millions of views. When all those things happen to you, well, you begin to wonder, heck, if I could do it here at LSU as a true freshman, well, why not do it for my home school in my home state? Heck, the coaches that recruited me aren't even here anymore. Why can't I leave? So that's basically it. And you have to factor that in when you recruit any other 5-star from out of state. I have defended Arik Gilbert in this video because I really do believe it is tough as a teenager, knowing that you can go anywhere, knowing that any coach will accept you as a transfer and you would play right away pretty much anywhere. I know that's tough, okay, and I understand indecisiveness. And I like Arik Gilbert. I can understand his frustration not putting him out wide, not using him the same like they used him against Missouri. And I know they don't have Miles Brennan anymore, and Torrey Carter's been out, and they've asked him to do more blocking. I've defended more so than a lot of people in the media, and I have factored in Arik Gilbert's mental health and all of that. And it is very important to do so when it comes to a recruit. Now, I want you to notice something now, okay? A Twitter profile can tell you a lot about a human being. Look who his Twitter cover photo is. Look at this. It's this guy. Wait, who is this guy? Oh, yeah. Kobe Bean Bryant. Okay? Not only Kobe, Mamba mentality. Okay? So, let's look something up real quick. So, Kobe Bryant played his last basketball game in the year 2015-2016. Okay? That is, 4 years ago. So, Arik Gilbert was 12, 13. So, essentially, the years that I was watching Jordan at his age were the years that he was watching Kobe in his prime. But imagine if Kobe Bryant was his LSU teammate, and Kobe Bryant heard that Arik Gilbert said that he doesn't want to play anymore at LSU because his body is hurt. What would Kobe Bryant do as his teammate? I loved Kobe. The Kobe and Shaq years were incredible. Okay? I feel a lot of you would agree with me on this. That if Kobe Bryant had heard that a teammate said that his body was hurt and he wants to quit the season, do you think Kobe would be like, oh, okay, Arik, well, if your body's hurt, go rest. Just go rest, okay? We don't want... No. Mentally, if you're mentally fatigued, I get that. And that was just an Ed Orgeron quote from what Arik Gilbert told him. And it might not be in full context of everything. But I'm letting you know that this man right here would not accept that. And let's just say Arik Gilbert's watching this. I love you, man. I would love to see you in purple and gold. I think you'd be great, and I hope you make the best decision for yourself. But if you were to truly ask yourself what this man would say, if you are actually opting out because your body's hurt, like your coach said, well, I think you know the answer to that if you're really a Kobe fan. I hope you enjoyed this video, folks. As I always do, I like to look at things deeply. Let me know what you think of 5-star recruiting. Let me know what you think of this video. Am I wrong? Am I wrong in any of this? Was I too hard or was I too easy? It's power. Our LSU. Boom! Ba, ba, ba. Woo! Come on, AG2. Let's do it. Let's go.